Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome our new attendees onto today's webinar, and also to welcome back our attendees as well who joined on from our previous webinars. It's lovely to really see everyone again. My name is Paul Lockwood, and I'll be your host for today. And today's webinar is brought to you by a collaboration of Bellingham IT and Spencer Hayes Group Insurance Brokers. For today's webinar, we'll be covering the topics around email etiquette and mobile working. So with that in mind, let's get straight into today's agenda. So during the webinar, we will be covering various topics from our experts who's kindly volunteered their time to help share their experiences from within this sector. For the duration of the webinar, we have muted microphones in the interest of keeping the webinar to an hour. However, we do encourage you to use the chat facility should you have any questions during any of the topics, which we'll happily read out during the Q&A sections. There'll be various takeaways as well today, which will be able to stay cyber aware and just better ways to help keep you protected and your staff members as well while working outside of the office. So for our first speaker today, we would like to welcome back Martin Wilson. Martin was one of our guest speakers for the last webinar, which covered web woes and protecting data. And it's really great to see you back with us today. Martin is the head of cyber and innovation at the Northeast Business Resilience Centre, and is helping to build the Northeast Business Resilience Centre too, which is helping deliver cyber protection advice and services to small businesses and enterprises in the North.
Sorry, I've just had an IT glitch. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can absolutely hear you fine.
Right, just bear with me. It just literally, my connection just dropped out. So just bear with me till I find my slide deck, because I have to switch the internet on and off. Just because we are supposed cyber experts doesn't mean that we don't get IT gremlins from time to time. So let me just try and share my screen. Can you see my screen okay? Does that come through okay?
Just coming through now.
Yeah. Brilliant.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Okay, and I shall just get rid of that bit. So you don't necessarily need to see that. All right, apologies. Right, I've got about 20 minutes to talk about some mobile working, some things that can go, some risks around mobile working, and joining me, I've also got Joe Cockcroft. So I'll just jump quickly to who Joe and I are. So I'm a serving police officer. I'm a detective inspector in the northeast of England. And the last sort of several years of my policing career, I've been involved in cybercrime prevention. So going out and speaking to businesses of various shapes and sizes, various numbers of employees, and just trying to help them sort of a little nudge, a little push in the right direction around cybersecurity. Then the last couple of years, I've had a marvelous opportunity to work in the Northeast Business Resilience Centre, where I work with ethical hacking students, who's also on this call, one called Joe. And Joe teaches me all sorts of really good stuff. And the idea is that the model that we do is that we are a non-for-profit centre. So we offer cybersecurity services, which Joe and his compatriots will go out and do. And they do that not unsupported, not unprofessionally. I think sometimes when you think of students doing cybersecurity services, the ethos surrounding that doesn't sound good, doesn't sound professional. Let me assure you that it is. And there's no commercial imperative for us. So as long as we're paying the students to do the work, we can bring the cost of some cybersecurity services right down. And also the students at the same time get some real and valuable work experience, and we get to harness their skills for the greater good. So to kind of set the scene, if you like, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand over to Joe, who's going to show you a little demo around how hackers sometimes exploit mobile networks, exploit mobile hotspots for nefarious means. So Joe, do you just want to try sharing your screen?
Yeah, one. Okay, hopefully you can all see that.
I can see that. Thanks, Joe.
Right. So let's get that started. So this is a demo of a fake Wi-Fi network designed to steal information. This particular one is designed around the Crown Plaza Wi-Fi that's offered to guests. Usually these Wi-Fi networks will be named to match the actual legitimate Wi-Fi, and they will not have a password like this one does. They would be completely open. With the way Wi-Fi works, if two open networks share the same name, they are merged together. Which one you connect to depends on which one you're closest to. Once connected, you're asked to sign in. This is an exact copy of Crown Plaza's portal. I was able to get this in about less than a minute while I was sat in the lobby with my laptop. The real Crown Plaza portal does not ask you to sign in, but as part of this is to steal credentials, I've modified it to do so. And as websites now give you the option to sign in using your Apple, Google, or Facebook account, we've done the same here. There's no option to register, only to sign in. This is in an attempt to force you to sign in using credentials that you might commonly use, or to use one of your accounts. Maybe you think, oh, I must have signed up before. I can't remember what my details are. I'll try these ones. Or to make it easy for you, you can use your Apple, Google, or Facebook accounts. For this demo, we're going to use the option to sign in using Apple. This is a fake copy of Apple's login page. And so I'm using fake credentials because I can't verify to see if you've actually entered Apple credentials at work, as this is a fake version of that. This is done with the hope that you enter your correct credentials, as they will be logged, and then I can view them. These can then be used to access your actual Apple account. And once the credentials have been entered, the fake Wi-Fi will grant me access to the internet. Now that we're signed in and connected to the internet, the average person will see no reason to doubt the legitimacy of this network. They'll go about their usual internet activity. In an attempt to mimic some activity, I've gone to the NEBLC website just to generate some traffic. And then once I've finished here, I'll also go to the BBC website just to generate some more traffic that I guess the average internet user might go to. So you've got a news site, for example, with the BBC. And then to finish that off, I'll also go to the HSBC website. This is to mimic some banking activity that you might also do while you're on your mobile device or on a laptop using, for example, a coffee shop's Wi-Fi. Not actually going to be doing any actual banking today, unfortunately, for you, so you won't be seeing any bank details. What you see here now is what the attacker sees while I was doing all that bit before on my phone. This is a log of all the network activity that's happening on a fake Wi-Fi network. From the second the device connects to the network, these logs begin to populate with all connections that that device is making. Not too much will happen here at the minute, as at this stage, I'm going through the sign-in process and demonstrating all of the different parts. But once I have signed in and got through that stage, we'll start to see some more logs relating to websites and other connections being made by that phone. I appreciate it might be difficult to see this text, but on the right are all the different websites from connections. So hopefully soon we'll begin to see the NEBLC website, followed by the BBC website, and then the HSBC website. This method of monitoring network activity is a basic one. I can see what websites you go to with this method, but I can't see much more than that. It's possible for me to get more detailed information, such as your account details, but that isn't covered by this demo. So we've just got a bit more network activity there, which means I've signed in. And then soon we should see the NEBLC website popping up as I go to that website. Any second now, that should be there. And there we go. There's some neblccenter.co.uk on this right. I appreciate you might not be able to see it, but I will zoom in a second. And we'll get other bits of links. So there's some Facebook stuff on the website. So we'll also get Facebook links and things like that. Some Google links. Now we've got the BBC stuff coming through from when I visited the BBC website. This was recorded at the same time as the earlier part of the demo, but it's just being shown separately. And there we have the HSBC stuff as well. So we've got all the free websites that I connected to there. I can see that and any other website that my phone has made connections to. And then you'll remember when signing into this Wi-Fi, I entered a username and password. That got stored somewhere. and there it is. So I entered for my email example@nebrc.demo. I used the Apple method of signing in. For password, I did a password. I forgot to put is. And request means it's the website I was trying to go to that prompted my phone to ask me to sign in. So we'll get rid of that, and then we'll go into some more detail. So back when I visited the NEBRC website, I can go back and search for that. If I type in nebrccentre.co.uk again, I can get more specific information. So there's me visiting that website. And I can see the same for the BBC as well. If I type in that, and I can see the BBC website that I just visited. And then finally, the HSBC website. I can see that as well. So in this method, it's just basic information gathering. So I can see the websites you type in, the websites you go to. I could take it a step further. I could see what you do on those websites, areas you go to. If you sign in, I'll be able to capture your account credentials as well. So that's just a brief, short demo. And then Martin, if you want to share your slides again, I believe there's a slide of a real world scenario to cover. It's just on the next slide there, I believe. Yeah, so this is a real world example of someone that got hacked using public Wi-Fi. This person worked for an airline, and every time they went through an airport, they would connect to the Wi-Fi, log onto Facebook, and check into that airport on Facebook. Then about 5 minutes afterwards, this message that you can see there, mate, I've made a mistake and I've no money. Please, can you help me? You can send it to this link. Friends of that person would receive this message on Facebook about 5 minutes after they checked into the airport. And as you can see, it asked them to transfer some money. Now, what had actually happened was upon arriving to that airport, this person connected to what they believed to be the airport Wi-Fi, but it was actually someone running something similar to what I've just shown you. As soon as they signed into Facebook, the person operating that fake Wi-Fi had access to their credentials straight away. And from there, once that person had got on the plane and took off and were no longer at the airport, no longer had access to internet, they signed into their Facebook account and sent this message to everyone on the friends list. Now, all it would take is for a few people to fall for that, send them the money, and the attacker could end up with a few hundred, maybe a few thousand. Back to you, Martin.
Thank you, Joe. That was really, really powerful. And it gets a point this, and you might think I'm going off on a complete tangent here. And why is he showing Neil Armstrong taking the first steps on the moon? In terms of computing power, the mobile phone that we keep in our pocket far outstrips the computing power of the lunar lander, and it's crazy when you think about that. And if you think about these phones, these devices that we keep in our pockets, well, they're no longer phones; they are computers, and they behave like computers. Yeah, I think sometimes we're switched on to the sort of physical aspect, the physical loss of the device, but we sometimes forget that actually they are computers. And just like computers, we need to start thinking about what networks we're connecting them to, which I think Joe has quite clearly shown us there, that we shouldn't just connect to any network without some precautions, and I'll touch on them shortly, and Gary may touch on some of this as well. So we need to sort of pause and think about our connectivity with those devices, because if you connect to the wrong one, the bad guys can see everything you're doing, which Joe's just alluded to. But also as well, there are some further precautions that we need to have around that device. And the NCSC, so the National Cybersecurity Centre, has a small business guide, and it's freely available. You can just go to their website or to our website and download the PDF, and it gives you loads of free, good, trusted advice. And it has a mobile devices section. And I've highlighted the pertinent points out of that section here. And the first one is, which we should all understand now, or at least be a bit more savvy to, is be cautious of unknown Wi-Fi hotspots, because they can be rogue, they can be malicious. Switch on password and PIN protection. So if we leave the devices on the train, we're not just picking it up and being able to scroll through and the data and the emails and everything else therein. If we're in a position whereby the device is lost or even stolen, we have the ability to track it, to try and recover it, to remotely lock it so it can't be accessed, and to remotely wipe it of all the data therein. So that can be a real great way of mitigating some of the physical security risks surrounding mobile devices. And because these devices are computers, we need to keep them up to date. So much like you would update the operating system on your laptop, on your desktop, or if you have them, a physical server, you need to keep the device up to date as well, because if you don't, that's how security calls and security weaknesses can occur. Because if you're not updating the device, it's not getting the latest security fixes. And equally, anything that we put on that phone, we call them apps, effectively a software. So where are we getting those apps from? Are they from trusted stores such as the Apple Store or the Google Store or the Android Store? Or are we just getting this software from anywhere and putting it on the phone? And that's really important to understand, that that's a major risk, because if you're getting software that you don't know where it's come from, then there could be a chance that that software is either being compromised or contains malware. And equally, anything we do have on the device, we need to keep up to date. So, you know, just like the Windows update, just like the Mac updates, whatever it is, we need to be applying those updates as soon as we can when they appear on our mobile devices, because fundamentally, it just keeps them a lot more safe. So really, we've whistled through that. I know we'll take questions at the end, but I hope that's been insightful. What we've tried to position there, hopefully you've seen, is rather than talk about this theoretically, is actually show you how a hack can occur, actually show you how hacks can occur if you connect to a bad Wi-Fi hotspot, and giving you some really quick tips around how to secure some of these devices. And I hope that's been useful.
Brilliant stuff. Thank you for that, Martin. Sorry, bear me one moment. Yeah, no, really insightful stuff, especially with the threats that are now appearing, especially with the remote side. You know, with cafes and other spots now, it's just always, you know, wise to keep that in the back of your mind. Next, we would like to introduce Gary Hibbard, the Professor of Communicating Cyber Thought. Gary is a cybersecurity and data protection specialist with 35 years in IT. He is a published author, regular blogger, and international speaker on everything from international security standards, dark web, cybercrime, business continuity, and cyber psychology. Take it away, Gary.
Thank you very much. First of all, just thanks for inviting me along to speak to your event today, and to all the participants. That, Martin, was a really interesting talk, and Joe, you know, great, fascinating view of man-in-the-middle attacks and how easy they are to carry out. So my session is just going to be very much focused over the next 20 minutes talking about email etiquette and how it helps against data theft and cyber incidents. The word etiquette is essentially a code of polite behavior. So it's a strange word to be using in the context of cybersecurity and such, but hopefully it will explain itself as we go through here, why email etiquette actually can help us become more secure. As Paul's just said there, in terms of my background, I am a cybersecurity professional. I've had 20 plus years actually as a cybersecurity practitioner. And I help organizations large and small, everything from two-man bands all the way up to several thousand international organizations implement security frameworks. But I do that with a view of pragmatism and practical advice to make this a simpler topic for us all to understand. Now, I think it's important for us to start at the beginning rather than just jumping in straight into some of the solutions, some of the ways that we can be better protected. I think we need to understand context. And context really is about the world in which we live. You know, the world in which we inhabit today is far different than it was just 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and further back. In fact, if we take a brief history, a step through history on cyber, I'm not going to go through each and every single one of these. You'll be pleased to hear, but it is within living memory that, you know, we had our very first computer virus, which was back in 1986, a computer virus called Brain, created by two brothers, in actual fact, to try and protect their copyright. Now, I mention that because it's important to recognize that where we are today with tens of thousands of new computer viruses being born every single day, the origination came from two people who were trying to protect their copyright. This is essentially two people who had a great idea, then latched onto by the bad guys, if you like, to try and exploit us. Fast forward to 1993, where we had the first commercial email packages being used within business. But it only took 6 years to 1999 for that fantastic tool to then be weaponized for the very first what can be termed global virus of for us all to be infected and for us all to be become aware of when the Melissa virus became prominent. So the technology that we're using today, which helps us do our jobs and to live our lives, we need to remember that cyber criminals and scammers and such will take that same technology and use it for their own ends. And of course, you know, fast forward to today, and we have artificial intelligence, we have augmented reality, we have machine learning and such that we are all using to our own ends, and cyber criminals are doing themselves, which obviously leads us to an apocalyptic world, you know, view. Hopefully we're not going to have robots taking over anytime soon. But it is a different world in which we live. You know, when we think about just the way that we live online, the speed of change in 60 seconds in terms of Facebook, 147,000 photos uploaded, 150,000 messages. And of course, as we approach Christmas and we know we're all ordering more and more things online, just Amazon themselves will ship over 6,000 packages. Now, this is leaving us into a very strange place. And as I said, we need to think about this, this world in which we live. Think about how many emails you send on a daily basis, how many emails you receive on a daily basis. Now think how many emails are sent globally on a daily basis. Have a number in your mind and see if it's anything close to the 306 billion emails sent every single day. That number is set to increase to over 347 billion in the next couple of years. And scarily, 94% of malware is delivered via email. Now, you know, statistics aside, what we need to recognize is that this deluge, this use of technology is leaving us at risk. And Martin could speak to this a lot better than I possibly can. But I do know that back in 2019, the research was conducted by UK Active Defence that stated that UK residents are more likely to be a victim of cybercrime or fraud than any other offence. It doesn't say banks, it doesn't say retailers, it doesn't say small business, it doesn't say large business, it says UK residents. You and I and our loved ones, we are more likely to be a victim of cybercrime or fraud. Why? Well, the answer is actually quite simple. Cyber criminals are embracing new technologies, which I've already mentioned. The size of our digital universe is expanding. Think of all those Facebook messages, all the social media that we use on a day-to-day basis. This is leading to an increase in the amount of data that we are sharing about ourselves without really thinking about it. And of course, a lot of that data sharing is happening through email. And many new internet users aren't aware of the risks that they face. And I'm not just talking about our younger entrants into this world. I'm talking about people who maybe during COVID-19, we bought devices to stay in touch with elderly loved ones that we couldn't go and physically see. Where was the training and the explanation about to them about email etiquette or about what they may start to see? And of course, cyber criminals don't care who they attack, and they will happily go for an 8-year-old to an 80-year-old to a small organization to a large organizations, because fundamentally, cyber criminals go where people go, and we are increasingly living online. But there's a problem with this living online, and it's one of the fundamental reasons I think that we are at risk, and that is that people are overwhelmed. People are overwhelmed with the amount of information. There's 306 billion emails that are sent globally. Think of, again, the number of emails that you receive. Statistics abound in this area, and again, depending on what you believe or what you see, think about your own inbox and your own email use. Statistics show that we send and receive on average 150 emails on a daily basis. Now, some of us will send far less, some of us will send and receive far more. But this is a problem, this feeling of overwhelm, and this hasn't gone away in this current climate in which we live. We know that back in 2020, early 2020, even before Boris Johnson announced the first lockdown, we had over 140 active email campaigns, sending over 200,000 malicious attachments, sending thousands upon thousands of emails into an unsuspecting public, and a nervous public, and a public that were fearful, uncertain, and doubtful about their current future, either personally or professionally. This led to an increase of over 650% of email viruses and reported crime. Now, that number undoubtedly has only increased since the first quarter of last year, but I put that there to represent, again, that cyber criminals are capitalizing on this uncertainty and this doubtful world in which we live. So we need to be better prepared and be able to protect ourselves. And there are some fairly simple things that we need to do. But part of this presentation is about GDPR and data protection. You might be wondering, how did we get from email etiquette and talking about cybersecurity to a regulation? Well, that's the reason why I'm called the Professor of Communicating Cyber. I can make those leaps, but it's not that big a leap. For anyone out there who hasn't read GDPR, and I'm hoping that you all have, if you are business owners, I'm sure you're well versed in this wonderful regulation and the Data Protection Act. But for anyone who hasn't, let me just illustrate just very quickly, how does all of this sit within this regulation? Remembering this is the law, we have to comply with this, just in the same way that when we sit in our cars, we have to put our seatbelts on, we have to comply with this law. But what it states within Article 5 of GDPR and the Data Protection Act is that data shall be processed in an appropriate manner to maintain security. What does that actually mean? Well, unfortunately, this is a fairly long paragraph with terrible grammar, because it doesn't have any real punctuation throughout it. But I'm allowing you just to take some time to read this. But I will draw your attention to a key phrase within this paragraph. It talks about the controller and the processors shall implement appropriate technical and organizational measures to ensure a level of security appropriate to the risk. What does that mean? Well, it will mean different things to each and every single person on this session today. Each one of you will have a different risk landscape. Each one of you will have a different view on business. You will do different things, everything from manufacturing through to retail, through to service organizations. You will have a different view on your risks. So you need to think about what that means to you. But how do we protect ourselves? Well, there's a few technical things that we can do. And these technical things, Martin's already mentioned, there's a great guide that's been provided by the National Cybersecurity Centre. I would definitely advise people to go and read, take a look at. But there's a few things that you can think about yourselves. First and foremost, you need to be thinking about what kind of email filters you have in place. So speak to your IT provider and ask them, how are emails being filtered? Before they even hit your inbox, are you having attachments, malicious attachments perhaps? Are these being blocked? How are they being blocked? There's what's known as an allow list that allows certain traffic into and out of your organization. So speak to your IT providers to find out what kind of email filtering and spam filtering is available. But you also need to think about deploying malware protection as well. So as email is coming through into your organization and attachments that are on there, you need to think about what kind of technical controls that, if the filter doesn't prevent that email coming through and somebody does open up a malicious attachment, what happens next? Again, play out the scenario with your IT provider, ask them how you are putting those defenses in place, or they have put those defenses in place, and how you can protect yourself. There is another way, and it's important for us all to do this as well. And I think this is about setting some groundwork with your teams, is have an acceptable use policy. An acceptable use policy in particular around data and around email. Is it acceptable for your teams to be able to give out banking details on an email that isn't encrypted? Is it acceptable for you to email your customer list or your supplier list on just as an attachment on an Excel spreadsheet, for instance? Is that acceptable? Is it not acceptable? What are the rules given around your email system, and indeed the way that data is used within your organization? But our focus today is on email. So have an acceptable use policy. There are lots of examples out there. You can Google acceptable use policy examples, take a look. There's plenty out there. If you want to, feel free to contact me and I'll be happy to share an example with you. Of course, this all leads to making users aware, making your teams aware and your loved ones aware of the scams that are out there. Ask them about their approach to email and their feelings around email. Or do they feel overwhelmed or not? But user awareness about social engineering, about phishing, about using mobile devices in public places, all of that kind of information should be part of your user awareness training. But part of this training, of course, will focus on things such as providing people examples of what does a phishing email look like, for instance. And, you know, these are undoubtedly, you're going to receive these no matter how good your technical controls are in place, no matter how good your spam filters are, no matter how good your IT provider is. There is no such thing as 100% certain. There's no such thing as 100% secure. So these will drop into your inboxes at some point. You can run phishing exercises and simulations to see what your staff would do should they receive this type of message. They should be taught on finding, you know, identifying what is a genuine email, looking out for key things such as attachments or generic greetings or a sense of urgency. And actually that sense of urgency in an email isn't often talked about. And it's almost the final thing that we can do. It's actually there is a shockingly simple thing that we can all do to improve our cybersecurity, in particular around email. And that is simply this: slow down. We all need to slow down. The problem that we have is that any one of us are checking our emails, and maybe some of you are already checking your emails as you're listening to this presentation. We are doing two things at once. We may be sat in front of the TV of an evening checking our emails as we're distracted by Coronation Street or the EastEnders or the MasterChefs or whatever our favorite program is at this point in time. We are distracted, and cyber criminals love this because they can capitalize on that. But also they know that we are busy people. And the thing that we constantly say within cybersecurity is, you know, think before you click. I think Martin said the phrase himself, think before you click. Well, before I can do that, I need to slow down. I need to recognize that it's okay for me to slow down, that I don't have to respond to an email within 5 minutes from a manager because it's dropped into my inbox, even though that email came through at 7 o'clock this morning, but I just absent-mindedly just checked my email first thing. Cyber criminals know that that is what is happening. So we ourselves need to give ourselves and our teams permission to slow down. Now, one of the ways that I do that quite regularly with my team, and it's something I use, and it's about the only time I'm going to name a particular tool to use, and that is a tool called Grammarly. Now, Grammarly, interestingly enough, is just a tool that is used to improve your writing skills. Now, I was that person back in 1993 who was supporting IT systems and in particular email. And I remember at the time when people were sending emails, it was this new technology. So I got people to understand the power of what they were doing. And I wrote at the time, back in 1993, a guide to email etiquette, strangely enough. And it talks about having salutations. Dear Gary, dear Paul, how are you? I hope you're well. And crafting emails, using that word, crafting emails, we seem to have lost that skill. That's something I think we need to reintroduce. We need to get people to think about the way that they structure emails and the code of conduct, this polite code of behavior, which is the word etiquette. Now, Grammarly allows you to do that because it checks your grammar, it checks your spelling. And what I do when I receive an email, if I'm unsure about it at all, is I take the content of that email and I copy it into a Word document and I check the grammar. I mean, sometimes it's quite obvious that it is a scam, but sometimes not so much, because again, cyber criminals are very much aware that we ourselves are onto them, as in they know that we're looking for grammatical errors. So quite often they insert them on purpose to try and weed out the advised, the well-informed. What they're looking for is that low-hanging fruit. They're looking for the people who haven't had this kind of training. But back to the point, we need ourselves to slow down. We need to give our teams permission to slow down, read the emails properly, craft an email properly. And I often say to people, when I'm looking at security and implementing security standards like ISO 27001, which is the International Standard for Information Security, or ISO 22301, which is the International Standard for Business Continuity. All of these standards are great and they have a massive part to play in securing us. But one of the standards I often advise people to go for as well is ISO 9001, which is quality. Because I often say to people, look, you need to be thinking about excellence in everything you do and quality in everything you do, not just within your product and services. But what about the quality in the email that I just sent to my colleague? What about, where is the excellence? You know, have I made them feel included within the team? Have I thought about that, the communication tool and the method that I'm using? So if not excellence, what are you going to do if it's not excellent? And if not excellent right now, well, when are you going to implement excellence? And that's something I often talk to people when I talk to them about ISO 9001. And with that, I would just simply say, by going beyond the technology and thinking about slowing things down and giving people that space, you have the ability to create something truly unique. And it doesn't cost anything. You can implement it with your next email. You can implement this with your team the minute that this session is over. And for me, that makes us all the potential to be superheroes. So with that, thank you ever so much again to the guys for inviting me along, and I'll invite questions. And there you are.
Brilliant. Excellent. Cheers for that, Gary. Much appreciated. I'm just going to reshare my screen. Hopefully you can see all that again. There we go. Brilliant stuff. Yeah, some really insightful points there, Gary. you know, I think in this day and age, you know, it's very, it can be very easy to miss some of the elements off in terms of some of the basics, really, just making sure things are compliant, making sure that excellence is there. So, but what we're going to do next is, guys, we're going to move on to some questions. Now, we've had some messages in, so I'm just going to quickly go into these now. Let's have a look. So, we've got a couple here. The first one I've got here is a hotspot safe in public? Not sure who would like to cover that one. Joe, would you like to cover that one? Is a basic hotspot safe? Is basically the question.
So mobile hotspots, being the ones that use both mobile hotspots and mobile data, are generally a lot safer than public Wi-Fi. The reason there being that you're the only one on that particular network. Of course, you're part of the wider network for your operator, whether it be O2, EE, whoever. But when you make a hotspot, you're making your own smaller network, and just your devices will be on that network. So devices like mine that could see what you're doing will not be on that network. That's not to say I couldn't work out the details to that hotspot, get on that network, and then do what I showed earlier. But generally, they also allow you to monitor what devices are on that hotspot. So yeah, a hotspot would be a lot safer than mobile Wi-Fi. If you have the data to do it, then I'd recommend using that over public Wi-Fi.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. Also, we've got another question in here is what are the types of common scams we should be aware about from so like when emails are coming in, what are the kind of common scams that we would usually see around at the moment?
In terms of origination, so what are they, HMRC type scams? Is that the kind of the question?
Exactly, yeah.
So yeah, I mean the aim generally is to gain access to money, and that's generally it. So that's as in the police terms, it's follow the money. And Martin, feel free to jump in at any points on this. But the kind of scams that we see at this time of year, it's the obvious ones. It's the missed courier delivering Christmas gifts. It is the HMRCs for those kind of scams. We see a lot in terms of supplier fraud. So this is where the scammers themselves will purport to be from a supplier. Bills haven't been paid, etc., or invoices to be paid. But yeah, typically around this time of year, you're going to start seeing the ones around Cyber Monday, deals, Christmas deals and such. Travel information. Of course, we're still seeing them around COVID. So NHS. What we've got to recognise is that cyber criminals are people, and unbelievably, people often get surprised at this, but they have conferences, they have meetings like this, and they will discuss what is the best method, and they're very good at it. And they know that, they watch the news, so they've just heard that we've just gone into another sort of semi-lockdown, so they know that there's going to be more uncertainty, there's going to be more questions about what people can and can't do, and they know also that the government are pushing out messages about come for a jab. So guess what we're going to start to see again, in the same way for the first wave, second wave, third, I don't know what wave we're on now, but we saw massive amounts of messages coming purportedly from the NHS saying, click on the link to accept your appointment to come and get your second jab or your third jab. And if they've got an access to a database of 10 million people, they're just going to hit 10 million people with that and say, you're due for your booster jab. Please click on the link below to book an appointment. Or, it's the same with emails as well.
Well, brilliant. No, cheers for that, Gary. Next question. I guess we're kind of going into social engineering here a little bit, but the question I've got is how susceptible are mobile phones to to being hacked and viruses and malware added to them? So an interesting question there. I don't know if that's one for you, Joe.
Yeah, so in terms of malware, it's very much a thing on mobile devices in exactly the same way it is on a laptop or desktop. You're depending on your device, let's say iPhone versus Android. A lot of people say that iPhones are completely secure, that you're not going to get anything on it. That's not strictly true. They're both susceptible to malware. Android definitely more so, but both of them can get malware in much the same way. So in the same way you'd be careful about what you open or what you download or where you go on a desktop or laptop, you should definitely keep the same considerations in mind on mobile devices, like with phones and tablets. You can also get antivirus applications for the mobile devices. So it could be, if you're worried about getting malware on your devices, it'd definitely be a good idea to get those installed on there. So they'll look at the sites you visit, apps you download, files you download, and just keep an eye out and alert you to any malware that might enter your device.
Cool. Cheers, Joe.
Just before we move on from that, Paul, I think Joe's just hit on an interesting point, which I don't think I wouldn't want to miss the opportunity to say, is that, again, cyber criminals are human. And the reason why many people have this perception that Apple products aren't susceptible, and I hear many Mac users say, oh, well, I don't need antivirus because cyber criminal, it doesn't work on Apple. And it's like, no, you're not being targeted. That's the point. So unbelievably, to some people, Apple is still not the prominent products out there. Android is, because there's a lot more variants of Android technology. There is a lot more PCs out there than there are Apple products. So again, put yourselves in the seat of a cyber criminal. And if you're going to create malware or viruses, what are you going to aim at? Are you going to aim at 30% of the market, or are you going to aim at 70% of the market? And that's the real rub. Don't worry, Apple users, we will get to you, is the message that, when you talk to cyber criminals. But predominantly they're aiming at PCs and Android platforms.
Yeah, it's I guess in hindsight, you just got to treat it like you would any other device, and that's the way I kind of see it. At the end of the day, it's a computer. It's a device created by humans, therefore it can be hacked again by humans. So it's just, for me, it's always about just keeping the protection means there, regardless anyway, because at some stage, those devices, they've got, if there's a possibility that they could be exploited or analyzed anyway, then I think it's just, better to put those measures in place beforehand. Sorry, Gary, to bring you back in here, we've had a really good question. And this is from Lee about what are the costs involved for gaining ISO 9001?
The cost involved in gaining just ISO 9001. It depends on the size of your organization, but you're not talking vast amounts of money. It does, unfortunately, it is a depends type question, because you're looking at what processes you have. It's a risk-based system, just like any. So it's not like in the old days where you had to document everything. But you can be, it's not a vast amount of money. It can be anything between £4,000 or £5,000 up to £15,000 typically, but that is a full managed service implementation and such. But for small organizations, you're looking at definitely at the lower end of that.
Brilliant. Cheers for that, Gary. The last question that we've got, it's really regarding the case studies that both Martin and Joe covered earlier. And the question is, would a VPN protect you from those kind of attacks?
Do you want me to answer that one, Paul?
If you could, please. Yeah, that'd be brilliant.
Yeah, they certainly will help. They'll certainly reduce the risk massively. So a VPN gives you a secure connection between the device that you're using to your end destination. So if you think about it, whether you're in a coffee shop somewhere, whether you're at home and you're going to visit Amazon, you still need to use the internet, and a VPN gives you a secure connection between your browser and the traffic that's going to Amazon and vice versa. So it doesn't mean that an attacker like Joe wouldn't be able to see that you're browsing the internet, but what they wouldn't be able to do is potentially see inside that encrypted tunnel. So VPNs are really good. I mean, people use VPNs sometimes not necessarily from a security point of view, but from a privacy point of view as well, because that way internet service providers potentially can't see where you're going and what it is you're doing. So VPNs are definitely a useful tool in your arsenal against cybercrime, and it's one of the things that are mentioned in that small business guide.
Brilliant. Cheers for that, Martin. Appreciate that. And thank you to our guest speakers as well today. Next, we just want to talk around some of the key things that you can start doing today to help improve security and awareness to reduce the risk of being a victim to cybercrime, as well as making sure that you can do everything to protect your data as well. As we mentioned there, we do recommend using a VPN when using public Wi-Fi. Despite being connected to the internet and having a VPN, there is a gap in coverage after you connect to the Wi-Fi. But before you can turn on your VPN, so as soon as you turn your VPN on, it just hides your internet connectivity, as Martin has just explained then. And also just regarding passwords as well. So the purpose of password complexity rules is to increase the universe of possible passwords. Assuming more possibilities will make it harder for a stranger to guess. So it's just really good advice, simply just to make sure that your passwords are, at least 8 digits, making sure you've got a symbol in there, making sure, you're not using common words that could be easily cracked from these big dictionaries now. So just something there you can look to implement as well today. And also another thing we'd like to bring in as well on this is about data backups. Obviously, with hackers now on the scene and forever growing their own skill sets, it's always important to make sure that you're keeping a really good backup of your data. So in those worst case scenarios, and for business continuity, you just want to make sure that you've got your data backed up securely. So if something was to go wrong, you can get that data back and you can start to resume within your business as well as quickly as possible. As we said at the beginning, this is the third of a series of 6 webinars. And our next one is going to be on the 25th of January, and the links will be provided to that as well next week. We would like to thank our guest speakers, Martin and Gary, for joining us today, and Joe as well for that brilliant demonstration and sharing your expertise and knowledge. And yeah, just a big thank you from ourselves at Bellingham IT and from the guys at Spencer Hayes Group Insurance Brokers as well for organising today's event. Thank you for joining, guys, and yeah, look to see you all very, very soon. Thank you.
Thank you.